Today I'm gonna do a demonstration on how to do an oil change. We have this 2002 Chevy Cavalier in our shop here. It's needing a change, so we're gonna do that. I've had the luxury of letting it warm up while it was sitting here, so I think I've got the vehicle up to operating temperature. So I'm gonna get this oil change done. I've got the vehicle information. It's a 2002 Chevy Cavalier with a 2.2 liter engine, so I'm gonna lift it and get it done. If the customer drives the vehicle to your shop, you're probably already gonna be warm. If you're just doing this in your driveway at home, it's probably a good idea to take your vehicle for a drive and heat up that oil. That way you're gonna have a better chance of getting all the oil out. And it's gonna come out a lot quicker, and you're just gonna have a cleaner engine after you're done with this. I apologize, I'm not gonna crawl around on the ground and mess with the jack that came with the car or anything like that. Not everybody has a 4-post hoist, but I do, so I'm gonna use it. Gonna get this thing up good and high. If you're wondering who's doing the videoing, I do have a camera mounted to my head here, so I'm gonna lift a little higher than what I normally would to create some clearance for that. So as you're checking out the shop here, hey Mr. Gooden, how's it going? Pretty good, pretty good. Maybe I'll talk to you in a little bit, okay? I'll come back and, or yeah, you can come back and see me. So that's just Mr. Gooden from our shop, or from our school here. This is the Crocus Plains Auto Tech shop, just so you know, and this video is for our students. If you're perusing YouTube and you see this video and it's gonna help you out, then by all means go ahead and use it. That's what it's there for. So I'm just gonna roll this oil drainer underneath the drain plug for the engine. A quick look is going to identify that this is the engine. There's a pulley on the front of the engine right there. There's the air conditioning compressor. So this is the engine, okay? This is the transmission. So by default, that's going to be my drain plug. We're usually organized a little bit better with our tools, but sitting here knowing I was going to need some tools for this job, I just grabbed a handful of wrenches and walked over. Gonna get after this. Okay, after you find the wrench that fits properly, I usually just give it a hit with my hand and make sure you're turning this in the proper direction to take it out. If your orientation's wrong, maybe take a look at the head of that drain plug and know that you're turning it this way. Okay. This drainer is telescopic, so I can slide it up and eliminate some splash that I might get while changing the oil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out this drain plug. I'm going to remind you that this engine was completely warmed up and it was hot, but you do this long enough and you can do this without making too big of a mess. So I'm going to turn it with my fingers. It's not too hot, but it's a little warm, and I'm going to keep pushing in on the plug until I can feel the plug is completely detached. Okay, this one's completely detached. So then I'm going to just quickly yank that away. And you can see, oh, I didn't pass the TikTok challenge of getting oil on your hand, but I got a little bit on there. Not bad. I'm hitting the drain pan, which is the important thing. It's a gigantic drain pan. I wouldn't have much of an excuse to miss it, but believe it or not, we miss it quite a bit. I'm gonna take a rag and wipe up this drain plug. I'm really trying to avoid any type of messes underneath the vehicle, because when the customer picks up their vehicle or puts this in their driveway later, if the oil's draining or dripping, they're gonna think there's some type of a leak. So I'm just gonna do a quick inspection, take a look at this, and the rubber is good on my drain plug still. Looks like my threads are good. The head of the drain plug isn't too damaged. So we're gonna be reusing this one today. I'm gonna put it off to the side. After you get your oil draining, the next task that you have is locating your oil filter and taking it off. So we're just going to take a little look here. I'm humoring you at this point because I do know where the oil filter is on a 2002 Cavalier. And for anybody that's done one of these before, you know that I haven't picked the easiest one to do. My hand needs to go up through here and locate it here. You can see my arm gets to conveniently go against this fairly warm exhaust pipe. And the oil filter is located up there. So I'm gonna try my best to get this one off of here from down below here. I've had a lot of luck in the past reaching these from up top, but I'm gonna try to help myself out a little bit by doing this. So let's see what I can do here. I'm gonna try turning it with my hand first. As I advertise to my students, try your hand first, because if your hand works, there's no sense wasting your time getting some complicated or bulky oil filter wrench up in there. And when you're a mechanic, you get yourself some pretty tough hands over the years. So I've broke this one free. I can feel it turning a little bit. So lucky me, I did not pre-break this one. I was setting myself up to fail, and my students know I do this all the time. You're gonna see the oil drip down the exhaust here, because unfortunately that's right below where the oil filter is. So I'm turning the oil filter in my hand. You'll just have to take my word for it, because you won't be able to see it. And the same thing as the drain plug, I'm kind of feeling the end of my threads there, right there. Okay, here's our big mess coming. So far I'm being fairly successful catching it all. And this filter it's kind of wedged up there. It's not easy to get into place. So I'm gonna turn the filter upside down and let it drain a little bit more. I've got a lot of cleanup to do here afterwards, but and then, as I figure, if my big hand can get in there, chances are I can get an oil filter out the same way. Do you see it up there? It's just kind of suspended there. I'm gonna try my best to get that out. Past this brake line, but it won't come. So I'm gonna look for another way. Anybody that's sitting here watching this video for a 2002 Cavalier, good luck, have fun. If it's your first one, you know, maybe that's not the first one you want to do. There we go, look at that. I found another road for the filter to come out of. So here's the oil filter here. It's a Wix, which is nice. That's the same filter I'm going to be using, and it's a 51040. I take a look at that, and then I'm actually interested to make sure that this gasket has come off the filter. This rubber gasket, if it stays on the engine, would be catastrophic to your engine, because these come off fairly easily. You can see I didn't work very hard at that. If this stays stuck up on your engine and then you come and put another oil filter in, you're going to have two of those up there. And you're gonna have some imminent engine failure. You're gonna have a big oil leak. It's gonna leak out all your oil. Hopefully you catch it before you get knocking and other horrible noises. So there's no sense in me really spending a whole lot of time cleaning this up yet, but I'm gonna just wipe up the worst of it here. All right, my oil's draining, perfect. And that's the biggest part of this job, was get my oil draining. I disconnected my vehicle speed sensor. My key's off, so this was safe to do. And I did that just so my hand didn't break that connector, because my arm was shoved up in there getting that filter out. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do some little bit of underneath inspection. What I noticed right away is that this little flexible exhaust pipe here, it doesn't seem to be leaking, but this mesh around it seems to be destroyed. So I'm gonna note that to the customer. But what I'm going to do is just an inspection underneath, Looking for anything obvious. CV boots, they're very commonly ripped, so I'm going to check that. Brake hoses, having cracks in them, having a brake leak would be a big issue. Okay. This transmission drain pan here seems to have a little bit of seepage, so I'm probably going to put a socket on there later and just confirm these are snug and stuff. And I'm doing this for my customer. I'm doing this to spot any obvious problems. Remember, as soon as this leaves the shop, anything that happens after that, the customer is going to say I did it. So I'm going to continue to do an inspection here, rattle my exhaust, grab my tie rod ends and give them a good shake. I'm going to try to find something. It's my job as a mechanic to find things. Leaky exhaust, attaches exhaust that's not attached very well, brake hoses on the back, especially the one next to the exhaust pipe. Okay, and I'm looking for any leaks. Looks like it's got some new parts back here for some reason, you know, some new shocks, so it's had that done recently. All right, well, I don't see anything major underneath here. Nothing major. Okay, all right, I'm gonna let this oil drain a little bit, and to facilitate that, I want to let my vehicle down so I can do some of my work from up above. I'm not a super big fan of the 5-minute oil changes. So as you see, this video is probably going to be, I don't know, half an hour today or something. If I don't spend so much time explaining things, obviously you can get it done a little bit quicker, but I want all the dirty oil out of this engine. Somebody paid money for me to give them an oil change, and well, I'm going to give them an oil change. So I'm going to let this down some to a working height. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just stop and I'm going to check the tire pressures on this vehicle first. So I've got some windows open on my manual system here. That's going to just accelerate me. I've opened 3 windows beforehand. I could show you how to navigate the menus, but it's not that important. It's going to tell me that my front tire pressure and my rear tire pressure is 30 psi. So I'm going to just take my long air hose here, and I'm going to top them all up. Now, I'm doing this video in January in Canada. Not sure if you're familiar with Canada, but we get a pretty cold winter. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the tire pressures at 35 psi. And that's because this vehicle is warm inside the shop here. I'm guessing the air inside the tires are pretty warm. It's been in the shop for a couple hours. I came here this morning and it's about lunchtime now. We have a very warm shop. So I'm going to put it at 35. So when it goes outside and we get the cooling effect from the air, that it's going to be around that 30 psi, depending on the conditions. I'm going to make them bang on. This vehicle does not have tire pressure monitors from what I know, but I know that customers really appreciate looking at their gauges on their dash and seeing your tire pressures all the same number. So I'm going to give them the same number. If this customer wants to double check their tires 3 days from now, it would be nice that they were all bang on. And you know what? The average day in the winter here is around minus 20 degrees Celsius. So I'd imagine that this 35 psi will be very, very close to 30 when they're checking it under those conditions. Just my experience. No one wasn't reading any pressure for some reason, but it was at 30 as well. So these were all good. You're at 29. They were all at 29 or 30 all the way around. So this thing, someone's been looking after this thing closely, I think. So another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this tread depth gauge and I'm going to read the tread depth really quickly on all the tires. I didn't do much of inspection on the tires yet, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tread depth gauge and I'm going to push it out all the way, and I'm going to find the narrowest or the thinnest part of the tire, insert the gauge, and then whichever line lines up the best with this chrome bottom, that's the number. So it's 6/32 seconds of an inch. 6/32 seconds. When you start getting down around, that one looks like it's 8 or so. When you start getting yourself down to the 3s, the 2s, and the 1, you're kind of down to needing some new tires. And you know, mechanics sell new tires. Our shop does. All shops do. And you don't want a customer going around with bald tires. These ones look really good all the way around. We're all at 7/30 seconds and things like that. Okay, good. I'm gonna let this down a little bit farther. Looks like my exhaust hose was struggling back there. So what I wanted to do is let this down to a height where I could access the inside of the vehicle. I'm going to turn the key to the on position. Be very careful that you don't go to start. You got to remember that the oil's drained out of this car, so we could have an issue. And I'm just going to turn on some lights. You can see that my side marker lights and my headlights are on the front. And my rear park lights are on, and my license plate light is on. I like to leave the lights on, so when I come here the next time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the left turn signal on and the brights. And I can already see, because of the reflection on the wall, that my headlights are still on, and I can see my left turn signal blinking. So I'm not even going to go up there. I'm just going to use the reflection from the wall. That one's good. My right turn signal, I can see the flashing over there, but you know what? You might not pick it up on the GoPro, so I'm going to just do a walk. So there's my brights are still on. And my right turn signal. I hope you feel I'm not doing too much on an oil change. I think this is the necessities on an oil change. If someone leaves and gets pulled over by the cops right away that their lights aren't working, well, that should be embarrassing for the shop that just let them go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this brake pedal depressor in. We have this here for our wheel alignment, just to make sure the brake lights are working. The brake lights are those brighter lights now on either side, and the center one in the middle. So that's important. And while I have that on, I'm just going to bump it into reverse. Now I can do this because I've got the brake pedal depressor in. It's a nice little hack, so you can quickly do that by yourself. And there's my reverse lights. A lot of shops have mirrors set up, so you can just sit in the vehicle and cycle through that stuff pretty fast. A lot of oil changes shops, you do this as a team of people. And yeah, it's nice to have a hand, but whatever, I can do it pretty quick by myself. And I'm doing it while that oil's draining. That's the beauty of all this, is that I gained, I don't know, I let it down and did tire pressures and my inspection and stuff, and I gained that time that is pretty valuable for my oil to drain. Okay, I'm gonna go back up. You can let your vehicle drain for as long as you wish. Because I pre-warmed this one up, I think what you'll find is that I'm down to a pretty slow drip at this point. When I'm down to a really slow drip, I think, okay, I've got it all. You know, I've done my due diligence here. I've waited a bit. If your vehicle is sitting in your Canadian driveway at -20, you might want to let it drain for an hour or more, because that oil is going to be very stringy and it's going to come out very slowly. I've done some of the groundwork here. There's my Wix 5140 here. I'm going to take the plastic off. I've got my 4.8 liters of 5W, or 3.8 liters of 5W30 sitting here. And the reason I have that much is because I looked on the owner's manual and it told me this is how much I needed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of that oil on my finger. Is oil toxic? Yeah, but when you live around it as long as we do in mechanics, you're touching oil every day, so it will not, it probably won't bother you at all. Now, that nasty oil filter. Oh, Cavaliers, you gotta learn. Stop doing this to us here. Okay, I remember where I got the oil filter out of. I kind of brought it through that hole. It went up there, and I can't show you, but I can feel it with my hand. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be very careful to make sure I don't get any dirt or gravel or anything inside this oil filter. And I'm gonna slide it up through the same hole as I took it out. The engine has cooled a tad since me taking it out, so that's nice. I'm gonna take that plug off again. I don't like doing an oil change and then making the customer's vehicle worse. So I'll take that plug off just so I don't break it. I'm being very careful with the filter in my hand to make sure that I'm not turning it up, pushing it through any dirt. I'm keeping it away from all the other parts up there. Okay, I've got this thing turned on. It's nice when things work out while you're doing a video, because I was not going to do this video 10 times to show an oil change. I was going to just get it done. Now, oil filters are hand tight. And if you lube that gasket like I did with the oil, hopefully when you take it apart next time, it won't be too much work. So, looks like I'm down to a drip there. Still dripping a bit. I'm gonna just take a look here. Go back to ProDemand. My engine oil for a 2.2 liter engine is 3.8 liters of 5W30, and that's what I have. And then I also have the torque spec for the drain plug. Now, if you're doing this at home, I recommend that you probably just grab that 15mm wrench that you use to break it free and give it a good nice snug. But with students in the shop and even out in the trade, let's not strip anything out there. We're gonna use the proper torque. So 18 foot-pounds on my torque wrench. So I've got a torque wrench here. Like I said before, it's a 15. So I'm just gonna grab a socket for that. There's my 15 right there. Again, you can skip this step if you wish. My torque wrench is only going as low as 20. And I know that seems like that's a big no-no there, Henderson, but I'm gonna be a little risque here and torque it to 20. Or try to torque it to 20. I do it this way to show my students, right? But I'm here with a fairly unpractical solution to your problem, telling you to torque it. Okay? We're gonna torque every drain plug and every wheel and every fastener that leaves our automotive shop here as this training facility. But when you're faced with the near impossible task, and nothing's impossible, I could get some different adapters on there, then we're gonna make do, and I'll show you the way that the other way. So nice firm pressure, make sure it's snug. Okay, take your rag, Make sure that you don't leave a wet drain pan, especially the engine oil drain pan, because that was you. That was your mistake. I'm gonna plug back in that sensor that I had unplugged, or everybody would be laughing at me at the end of this one. And I'm gonna do my best now to wipe up that oil from the filter. Oil from the filter could end up in a lot of different places, everybody. Skid plates are very, very common for holding as much as they can, and that can be very embarrassing when it leaves your shop and then all that oil starts dripping out of the skid plate, not out of the engine. You haven't done a bad job, out of the engine, and then it makes it look like now that you have done a job where you have a vehicle that's leaking a whole bunch of oil. So we're gonna avoid that by wiping up our mess. Okay? We're gonna kick that drain pan out. I don't know how I'm doing for the video time here. I'm just gonna check my phone, 25 minutes. I didn't promise anybody half an hour, but I was thinking, you know, explaining things and doing the Cavalier would probably take half an hour. So we're doing pretty good. I have to watch my exhaust hose back there. It's kind of got caught in the car. We have a nice ventilation system here, so I can start it, but you can see how the jack is kind of getting it caught. I don't want to do any damage, so I'm going to take the extra time to just avoid the embarrassment of wrecking my exhaust hose or a customer's car on YouTube. Yes, the YouTube police would love that one. All right. I'm a kind of a tall guy, so I don't like having my car down too low. I like the view that I get from here, I guess. Okay. All right. My drain plug's in, my filter's on. I'm good underneath. Immediately I want to put oil in this thing, so I don't make the rookie mistake of starting it without any oil in it. So I'm gonna wipe off this drain, this dipstick, so I don't make a mess. I'm gonna grab my oil while my hose is put away here. And yeah, I'm gonna use a funnel on this. I have a clean funnel here. We put all our funnels in a wash tank, so they come out pretty good. Same with all our oil jugs here. We have a bulk oil station. I can show you at another time in a video maybe. And then I'm gonna put my oil in. Try not to pour it in so fast that it backs up the funnel, because if it backs up the funnel, it might back up in the engine and then put oil all over your exhaust manifold or make a mess of the underneath the hood. And you know, customers don't appreciate that smell when they leave the shop. What's that smell or whatever? And then they pop the hood and they're like, oh my goodness, the guy that did my oil change, or the girl that did my oil change, just got oil everywhere. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put most of it in. I looked this up in the manual and it said 3.8 liters of oil. Now I don't know if that's enough or whether that's too much or whatever, so what I'm gonna do is just put the bulk of it in. Then while I just let that sit a second, I'm gonna quickly check some of my other fluids. I see I have a little fluid dipstick right here. Maybe I would benefit from the light, everybody. These aren't all gonna be in the same spot on your vehicle, unless of course you own a Cavalier or a Sunfire or something. But I'm gonna check my fluids underneath the hood. Okay, the fluid level is to the top of this line here, which is the hot line. So this thing is warm, it's not really hot, so that might be a little overfull, but I'm not doing anything with that. Brake fluid containers are clear for a reason. Please don't open them and get any dirt or water in them. Just look from the outside. okay? My brake fluid there is good. My washer fluid's right here, and I'm gonna add that later. I'm not gonna maybe add that to the length of this video because I think that's a pretty easy thing to do. And my coolant tank is right here. Oh my goodness. What's wrong with my hands today? I broke free that oil filter, no problem, but you want to open these reservoirs hot carefully. It says never open hot. I'm opening it in a warm position, but what I'm doing is just sensing or listening for any pressure relief or anything like that. If this thing has some pressure buildup, you're not going to want to open it up, but we're mechanics, we do oil changes all the time. This is what we got to do. Now you're probably wondering, why don't I just look through the side of the tank to tell how much is in there? Well, I'm not concerned about how much is in there right now. I wanted to do the strength of my antifreeze, so I'm going to use my little antifreeze tester here. I'm going to fill it up to the proper amount there, and I'm going to test the strength of this antifreeze. Looks like there was some air bubbles in there. That needle just jumped. Oh, well, that's interesting. I'm not setting this up. This is just what happens when I make videos. Degrees Celsius minus 25. Well, if you know anything about a Canadian winter or a Manitoba winter, that's not enough. So before this leaves here today, I'm going to drain about 3 liters of antifreeze or so, or 4 liters of antifreeze out of the cooling system, and I'm going to replace that antifreeze with straight antifreeze. That's not good enough, minus 25. So if you didn't notice, didn't know, your antifreeze is mixed with water about 50-50, and 50-50 should get you about minus 35. This one's sitting here at minus 25, and in Canada that's going to freeze. In Manitoba at least, that's going to freeze probably, oh, I don't know, 35, 40 nights of the year. So I'm going to have to deal with that. That's no good. That's why I do the checks. That's why I do the checks. All right, the checks are important. One more thing, and I could just tell you to check this, but I'm going to throw it on the video too. I know I'm getting to that time limit, but on the same note, hey, sometimes oil changes just take longer. I've had a few problems with this one, but what I'm going to do also is check the air filter. So if I can recap on some of my checks I did an underneath check for fluid leaks, loose parts, and anything that was noticeable. I did the tire pressures, and I looked at the tread depth of everything. You don't have to measure it, you could even just analyze them and take a look. I did all the fluids underneath the dash, under the hood here, because that's what people expect. I did the lights, and I'm also going to do the air filter, the strength of the antifreeze, and again, we're in Manitoba, I can tell you again, we're going to do the block heater as well before this thing leaves. We're going to make sure that block heater works. So you can take a look at an air filter. You can see this one here is actually pretty good. You shine a light through it. If light shines through, that means air goes through as well, okay? Little trick that not too many people know. Sometimes you take these things out and there's a bunch of grasshoppers in there, and people are like, oh my goodness, I need a new air filter because it had grasshoppers in it. But you can see light through it perfectly fine. Just knock the grasshoppers out and put it back in. But then vice versa, sometimes you take out an air filter and it looks clean, but you shine light through it and no light can shine through it. Well, that's because that air filter's plugged. So make sure that you understand that it's not about looking dirty, it's about whether you can see light through it or not. And I'm sure that'll cause some debate on the internet or whatever, but this is meant for my students here, you know. What grade? Grade 10 is when we start doing oil changes, but you know, students will do them again in grade 12 and recap. So that's what this video is meant for, is some grade 10 students in a high school. Okay, So it's been sitting here long enough. I'm gonna just check the oil. You can see that it's about halfway up the cross-hatched area on the dipstick. It's there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to start this engine. That has enough oil to safely start. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna look for the presence of an automatic transmission dipstick. Not all vehicles have them, and I know that these Cavaliers don't. So I won't be checking the transmission fluid here today. The transmission is more of a check for leaks type situation. So I'm gonna start the vehicle, and I gotta look for a couple things. I need to look for the presence of that oil change light right there in the corner, and that needs to go out. So I'm gonna start it up. Okay, the light's out, so that means it has oil pressure. The next thing you wanna do is look for any leaks. If you didn't make too much of a mess underneath, then you should be able to spot any leaks. I don't see any leaks. Everything looks and sounds good. Sounds normal, I'll say. And my oil pressure light's out. It's been running for 20 seconds or something. So I'll shut it off. When you start the vehicle for the first time, it's gonna fill that empty oil filter that was in there. So you need to expect to add oil. If it was good before, it's gonna be low now. Now this one was already about half a liter low. So we will top it up. We'll top it up. Put my funnel back in. And judging from how low it was before I started to now, I'm gonna dump in the rest of this. I'm gonna put the full 3.8 liters in. I think it's gonna be just all right. I think it's gonna be good. I'm gonna use a rag anytime I move the funnel or the dipstick into position. Then I don't get oil on the customer's vehicle. Check the oil, and now it's up a little higher. It's just over half, so that oil that I put in kind of countered what the filter took, and then a little bit more. So I'm gonna add just a hair more. I don't want to get it right to the full line, because as you do that you could go over, and that's no good. So I'm gonna just add a little bit more. What I'm gonna leave out of this video, but I'm gonna tell you, is that you should really do something to record when you did the oil change or whatever. So if your vehicle had a reminder on the dash telling you to do an oil change, then you're gonna wanna find in your owner's manual how to shut that off. When you reset that, it'll tell you next time when you need to do an oil change. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a sticker in the top left-hand corner, and I'm gonna put today's date on it, the type of oil I put in it, and what the kilometers were on the vehicle, so that person's gonna know when to do their oil change next. And if that customer's mine, they're gonna understand my sticker. I put the current kilometers on it, and they, you know, maybe add 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever their vehicle recommends, or whatever they recommend they want it done at. But anyways, that's how we do an oil change here at Crocus Plains. I hope you've found it informational and can make good use of that information.